Hi everyone, welcome to this Workout Wednesday. I want to walk you through my solution, how you can build a Pareto chart with colored backgrounds. Now for this week, we actually have a very small data set. If you see over here, we only have two fields that we really need, and that is the customer ID and the sales. If you have never heard of a Pareto chart before, it is often used to make some analysis such as 20% of our customers, how much sales do they bring in? Ideally, we want about 20% of our customers to bring in 80% of our sales. Okay, so let's get into it. So first, I want to count my customers. So I right click on customer ID, drag it to columns, and then I have this window. So I'm going to choose count distinct of my customers. And I'm just going to drag sales onto rows for now. That gives me this chart right here. The next step is to calculate the running sum of the percent of total for both of these metrics. I'm going to show you how to do this. So first I'm going to right click on my first metric, and I'm going to add a table calculation to it. And in this table calculation, I want to say running total, and I don't want it to restart for each customer, so I do want to tick this customer ID down here. And then you see there is this option to add a secondary calculation. That means I can add a table calculation on top of a table calculation. Think of it like a nested table calculation. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to say a running total of a percent of total. And customer ID is ticked, so that looks good to me for now. This is how it's supposed to look like. Let's just do the same for sales. So I'm going to add a table calculation. I'm going to do a running total. Don't restart for each customer. Add a secondary calculation and percent of total. Great. That gives us this line. Now let's change this to an area chart for now. It looks something like this. However, for a Pareto chart, what we want is the customers to be sorted with the customers who contribute the most at the front and the customers who contribute the least at the end. So let's right click on customer ID, sort, and then we want to sort by a field in descending order. Just takes a second to load here. There you go, in descending order. And I don't want to sort by customer ID, but by sales. And this gives us already this really nice Pareto chart. I'm going to change this to entire view so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, we're getting closer here. So to visualize that principle of 20/80, or how much percent of our sales do certain percentage of my customers bring in, I'm just going to add some reference lines here. So I'm going to right click, add a reference line. And since I just want this to be a constant, I'm just going to choose constant here on the right. And I'm just going to do 0.2 because this is the 20% of my customers. And the value I set to none and none. And then let's just choose another color. So I'm just going to do, maybe I'm going to do a white line, and I'm going to make this a little bolder. And don't forget to increase the opacity. So now I have one line here, and I can do the same thing on my y-axis. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to set it to constant. Just going to set it to 20% as well. I can turn off the label and the tooltip, set it to white, make it bold. And don't forget to increase the opacity. I always do that. Okay, so now we already have these types of reference lines here. Now I chose white because in the final solution, if you look at the final solution, we want those reference lines here to be white. But if you want to change it to a different color just to see how it looks, that's completely fine for now too. I'm just going to do the same thing at the 80% mark. So I'm going to add a reference line here. And I'm going to set this as a constant. And here I type 0.8 to correspond to 80%. And again, I'm just going to set this to none and white and bold and increase the opacity. And I'm going to do that one more time, a fourth time. And I'm going to do this on the x-axis. I'm not going to talk you through this because you've already heard it now 3 times, but I'm going to set this to 0.8 as well. And now we have all of our reference lines set up how it's supposed to be in the solution. Now we kind of have this really nice grid here. And so if you want to interpret this now, you can hover over it, and where the line hits our chart here, for example, we can see that 20.0.2% of customers make up 48% of our sales. So imagine if those 20% of customers would suddenly leave our business, we would lose out of 48% of our sales. Okay, let's head over to the solution. So my area chart has this really nice dark blue. So let's just switch this here to the dark blue. Just need to increase the opacity as well. So that already looks pretty close to what we have here. I don't know if I used the same blue. Maybe it was this blue here. Let's see if that's closer. There you go. Okay. So now that we have the reference line and we have our chart, now let's worry about the background here. Now the background is going to be a little bit tedious, so stick with me for it. The background is actually consisting of, and I'm going to show this on the solution here, it's consisting of reference bands. So there's one band that goes from 0% to 10%, and there's another band that goes from 10 to 20%. The reason why I colored these is because these customers here, the first 20%, those are our risky customers. If we lose those customers, we lose out of a lot of our business. I mean, you see, 20% of customers make up nearly 50% of sales. So I want to color these in orange. And then here at the end on the right side, we have the customers who don't contribute too much to our business. So if we were to lose out on them, we wouldn't lose too much of our sales or our business. That's why I want to highlight those in green. Now, as I said, these are reference bands. So this is one reference band, another reference band, one big reference band here in the middle, and then another 2 on the right. So let's go back here. And all of those reference bands, they are on the x-axis. So you right click on x-axis, add reference line, and then you are changing this to a band. And you can choose the minimum and the maximum. In this case, I don't want the minimum maximum. I want the band to go from a constant to a constant. And my constant, as I said before, is for the first one, 0 to 0.1. Make sure to turn off the labels and the tooltips. There you go. And then filling, I think I had this very light green here. I'll have to double check. But then if I move this here out of the way, you already see that my reference band is now here in the background and it looks really nice. Let me check if oh no, I had it in orange. Oh well, that's fine. I'm just going to go in here, and if you right click, you see that the reference band is noted here as this range. So you can just go in here and quickly change the color. So this is really the tedious part here where you just have to repeat that. So I'm going to add another reference line and again make it into a band. Choosing 2 constants, and in this case it goes from 0.1 to 0.2. Turn off all the labels and the tooltips, and then choose the other color that I had here. Yeah. So I'm going to do this for the other reference bands so you don't have to watch me do all of that, and then I'll be right back. I love modern video software. So now I quickly added all of those reference bands, and now we can just do a couple final touches and then we're nearly done. So the first thing that I want to change is the grid lines here in the back. So the solution doesn't have grid lines. You can just right click, format, go to the very end here, and you see the grid lines are turned on, so I can just turn them off. Perfect. Let's compare it to the solution. What else do we need to do? We can rename this to running sum of percent of sales. So just right click, edit axis, and that should give you this window, and you can say running sum of percent of sales. And let's see what we have down here, running sum of percent of customer IDs. So same thing, running sum of percent of customer IDs. Okay, we're getting close there. Now, if you notice, there is this white line over here in the solution, and we don't have that because our area chart only fills in the area in blue. So we need to do a dual axis here to get that line. So if I just click Control on my keyboard and I duplicate my measure over here, we can see that I have the duplication here. If I go in here, I can change the area to a line. And now I can set the line to be white and maybe increase the size a little bit to make it a little bolder. Approximately maybe the same width as our reference lines. That looks pretty good. And now I dual axis this. And I would just always recommend synchronizing the axis because sometimes it doesn't perfectly synchronize and then, yeah, it doesn't look great. And then I can hide this header and this is how it looks. Now you see that the axis starts from 0 to 100, but mine has some gaps here on the right and the left. So if you don't know how to change that, just right click, edit axis, and you get to this window again. And then you see automatic goes from a little bit under 0 to a little bit above 100%. So I can just set the start and the end to 0 and 1. There you go. Okay. The only other thing we need to do is our annotations here. So this annotation is 20% of customers. So you can just find that approximate point. I think the point I chose is 20% 0.02. So you choose that point or right click and then annotate the point. And then you can format this. So in this case, I want to say 20% of customers make up, and I'm going to delete this, X% of customers make up 20% of our sales. Something like that. I will let you format it to look a little nicer, but just for now, I'm going to do just a little bit bigger, something like that. And there's our annotation. Now, we want to format this. So I think I had it, I don't know if I did have a box, but the shading was white and 100% because I wanted a white background. I don't think it had a border, and I think I had it as rounded a little bit. And then I probably had, like, you can just drag it by taking it and like dragging it around. And then I think the line was like a maybe darker gray or something like that. Yeah, I think that looks pretty close to what I had here. I can right click on it, drag it a little, make it a little wider. So that looks pretty close. So you can do that for the last point over here as well, similar to the solution. And if you want only one decimal point instead of two, like how I have it here, you would just go into the metric here, right click, format, and then if it's on axis, just make sure that it's on pane over here, and then you can change the percentage and reduce the decimal points, and then you just need to do that for the other one as well. So right click format, make sure it's set to pane, percentage, and 1 decimal point. And you just need to do that for the other point. So let me just find this here. So it's about the 80%. So I'm going to right click here, annotate point, and then you just have to reformat this again. So we can say that's about 80% of our sales comes from X% of our customers. And again, you can reformat it a little bit, get a little prettier. You can go wild here. And then you can just drag it around, format it again. So I'm just going to do white background, no border, rounded corners, maybe a little darker line. Forgot if I had it a little bolder, maybe even. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then if you compare it to the solution, you would have to play around a little bit. Oh, actually, I realized that these are flipped around. So we want the sales first and then the customers. Sorry. So if you go in here, you just need to flip these around because I said the count distinct of customers is percent of sales, which was wrong. So just flip these two around. I literally just like cut it out and insert it again. And there you go. So you may have to play around a little bit with exactly what point to choose here. I think here I chose the 80.0% point. But if you're close enough, I think that should be fine for this Workout Wednesday. But yeah, I would say that looks like the solution. I think we've done everything, and I hope this was helpful to you.